Hello guys and welcome to this Wordle tutorial in Pygame. So right about now we have drawn all the tiles and also we made a way so we can type it in the letters. Okay, there's no animation yet, but we can type in all the letters and we can also erase the letters. And if you press the enter key, you don't really see anything happening, but you actually going to the next row. Okay, and then if I press the enter key with not enough letters, less than 5 letters, nothing will happen yet as well. There's no animation, but we're still in the same row. Okay, and then if I press again, then we go to the next row and so on. Okay, so let's continue. So the next thing to do now is the actual algorithm that will check each of the letters that you pasted in, that you typed in, against the actual word that we're trying to guess. Okay, we're going to create this function right about here. So just after this drop function before the events, we're going to create a function called check letters, which will check all the letters basically. And inside of this function, so I'm gonna put in here, this is the algorithm to check if the letters inputted correspond to any of the letters in the actual words. We need to make a copy of the words. Okay, so we're going to create this variable called copy word. Actually, it doesn't even need to be a self in there. You can just put copy word just like that. We want to make a copy of the words. Okay, so we just want to take every letter in the actual words that we're trying to guess, and we're just making a copy of it. For that, I'm just going to do a very simple for loop in here. So x for x in self.word. Okay, so we're just adding it to a list. Okay, so we're copying this words and we're adding it to a list. Okay, so I'm just taking every letter in this word and I'm appending that to this list basically. And then we're going to do a enumerated for loop in here. So for I and user letter in enumerate self.text, the enumerate takes the index and the actual element of the list that we're passing in, or the string. So we need to get a hold of both of those things. And then we're going to set a variable for the color, which is light gray for start. So light gray means the letter is definitely not in the word. Okay, and then we're going to create another for loop. So for j and letter, so this one first here is the user letter from the self.text, and now just the letter here is in enumerate of the copy word. Okay, so we're going to enumerate this, and then we're just checking if the user letter is equals to the actual letter, and we'll set this color. If it is true, then we'll set that color to yellow. And if the indexes, so if I is equals to j, that means they are in the correct place. So if the user letter is equals to any of the letters in the word, we transform them into yellow. But then if the actual indexes of the user letter and the actual words are the same, then this color needs to be green. Okay, so it means the letter is in the exact place where we want them. And then we just do self dot sorry, not self. We just did copy words, and we're going to take that coordinate. It can be I or j in here. Actually, no, it needs to be j. Sorry, because we're not inside of the if statement anymore. And we're just going to make that an empty string. Okay, I'm going to explain this in a little bit. And after this, we just break it. Okay, so this is the algorithm that we use, or at least that I came up with, to check the letters inputted. Okay, so after this, in line with this for loop in here, this is where we're going to do the review animation. Okay, so there's nothing more related to the actual algorithm. This is just the review animation, so it's the cards flipping animation. But then we will come back in here and type that in once we have that function ready. So why do we need to make a copy of this word in here? So if the actual words that we're trying to guess, okay, I'm just going to make some space in here to explain this. So let's say spear is the word that we're trying to guess. And then we type in speed, okay? So the word that we type in, there's two E's in there. And then spear has only one E. If we don't use this with the copy word, then we're going to check the word that we type in. It's going to see there's an E in there, and it's going to turn this into yellow. And then it's going to see there's an E in there. Oh, there's an E in there. So we need to make this yellow. So then this, both letters are going to be yellow, but we only have one E on our word. Okay, so that's why I do this. So if we do all of this, and if the the indexes are not the same, or even if they are, then we need to take that copy words in that index and we need to make it empty. Okay, so we're making this empty, like a space. Okay, so then we check a E in here, there was an E in there, and then we make this one a space. So whenever we check the second E, the E is not there anymore. So this is going to be gray out. So the first E is going to be yellow or green, and the second one is going to be gray out. I really hope this makes sense. So that's why I do I do a copy of this word so I can keep track of the letters basically. And then so in the review animation here is where we're going to pass in this color and the letter, I believe. Okay, so we're going to pass it into the animation, and the animation is going to do all the reviews with the color and the letter. I think now we got to the part where a lot of you was probably expecting, is the animations functions. Okay, so we're going to be creating those three. There are three different functions for the animation. One is the box animation, which pops the letter when every time you input a letter, it pops the tile. Second one is the review animation, so it's going to flip the cards when you press the enter key. And the third one is going to be the row animation, is that one that goes back and forth if there's no enough letters inputted. Okay, so there will be three animations that we're going to be working with. So let's start. The first one we're going to be working on is the box animation, which is, I think, is probably the easiest of the animations. Right after, before the algorithm in here, so after this draw function, we will define a function called box animation. So this is where the tile scale increase, increase and decrease. So tile scale animation for every letter inserted, okay, or every letter inputted. Okay, so we're going to start with a for loop in here. So for tile, in self.tiles, and then we need to see the current row that we're in. If the tile dot letter is equals to empty, then we're going to do a screen copy. Okay, so we're going to copy the screen. So this box animation is going to be called here. So every time we add the letter to the text, we call this box animation. So we need to go through the letters in the row, and we need to see which one is the next letter that we're typing in. So the next letter should be empty, okay? Because if we have typed in any of the letters before, they will not be empty. They will have a letter in there. So that's the tile that we want to target, is the one that doesn't have a letter yet, and we will add a letter at the end of this animation. So we're going to make a screen copy. So self.screen.copy. And now is where the animation is going to happen. So we're going to do a for loop. So we're going to have three variables in here. So start, end, and step. Okay, in, and then in here we're going to pass in two tuples, 0, 6, and 1, and then 0, minus 6, minus 1. So these are just numbers that I came up with, that I was testing the animation to see how big was the animation or how small, and I was just testing, and I came up with these numbers. Okay, so the first time this loop is going to go through, it will use these numbers here. So we have start, end, and step. So we start at 0, we end at 6, and we step by 1. And then the second time we go through this loop, it will do 0, minus 6, minus 1, which goes backwards. Okay, so first time we go from 0 to 6, and then we go from 0 to minus 6, so we go back. And then in here we do another for loop. So for size in range of the start, end, and 2 times this step in this case. Okay, because we're going to be stepping by 2. This will make sense at the end, because then once we finish this, once we have the animation complete, then we can do some tests and I can show you what's the difference between the numbers. So we do this for loop, and then we're going to take the screen, not the screen copy, self.screen.blit, and we're actually going to blitz the copy of that screen into the normal screen. Okay, and then we're going to create some variables in here. So not create, so we're going to use some variables in here. So the tile.x, so we're going to take the coordinate of this tile that we're editing. It's going to be minus equals to the size. Okay, so the size in here is going to go from 0 to 6, stepping by 2, and then the second time, so it's growing in size basically, the tile, and the second time we're going to decrease the size. So minus equals size, and then also tile.y minus equals size as well. Okay, and then also tile.width plus equals size times 2, and then tile.height plus equals size, this is times 2. Okay, so basically in here we're taking the coordinate of the tile and we're decreasing by the size, because we need to move. So every time we press a letter, you see that the tile moves this way. So we need to decrease the x, decrease the y. And the width and the height, we need to increase it. You see that the tile goes upwards and downwards, so it increases the height and also increases the width. Okay, so that's what we're doing in here. Then we're going to create a surface. So pygame.surface, and we're going to take the tile.width and the tile.height in there, and we're going to do a surface.fill, and we're going to fill up with the background color. Okay, and then we do self.screen.blit the surface into the tile.x and tile.y coordinates, the updated coordinates and the updated sizes. And then we do tile.draw self.screen, so we can just draw into our screen. And then we do pygame.display.flip, so we just flip the display so it updates. And we also need to just regulate the clock speed in here, so the clock tick FPS. So this is the code for the animation. Okay, so this for loop in here is going to run twice. One from 0 to 6, second time from 0 to minus 6. So first we increase the size. So let me just demonstrate this again. You see each of the tiles, the first one here, it increases and then it decreases the size and it goes back to default. So that's what we're doing here. We're increasing the size and then we're decreasing the size. And then we're just calculating the size here. Okay, so this runs twice, and this runs from 0 to 6, and then from 0 to -6. Okay, so it just grows and shrinks. So this is the code that we need in there. The last thing we need to do in here, inline, so after we do all of this, then we need to add the letter. Okay, so we add the letter and then we decrease the size. It's very fast in here to see it, but that's what's happening. So I press the letter and it gives the impression. So you see the tile goes, it increases, adds the letter, and then decreases. So that's what we're doing in here. And then after this one, we can just break. Okay, so once we reach this empty letter is the one that we're animating now, we do all the animation and then we can just break because we don't need to check all the letters in this current row anymore because that's the one that we inserted now. Okay, so let's test this. Hopefully this is working and I hope you guys understand this. Again, you can always leave a comment below and I can try to explain better. So we're going to be calling this box animation in, where do we call this? In here, I believe. So whenever we type in a letter or any of the keys that is not returned or backspace, we check if the text is less than 5 and if the event, the letter that the key that we're typing in is a letter, not a symbol or number, then we call box animation here. Let's test this. There we go. So every time I press a letter, it adds in there. Okay, I just pressed enter now, just go to the next row. Okay, so every time I press a letter, there's this box animation. Okay, and you can even do very fast as well, it will work as well. Okay, it takes a little second to go because it needs to go through all the for loops to increase the size, but it works very well. So now the next animation to work on is going to be the review animation. So whenever you press the return key, it will flip, it will review all the letters, the colors basically, based on this check letters algorithm. By the way, actually this check letters function, we need to call that in here where I put this comment. So we're gonna just call that in here. So check letters. And then that review animation is going to be called in the check letters in here. Okay. Alright, so let's go just after the box animation. We're going to define a new function in here called review animation. And in here, we're going to take two parameters in there. One is the tile that we're revealing. So we're going to review the whole row basically. And the second one is the color. Okay, so that this function is going to be calling here and it's going to take the tile that we're revealing based on the index and also this color variable here. Alright, so let's start with this one. So this function will review the colors animation when user input the whole word. Okay, first thing we need to do in here, again, we're just gonna make a copy of the screen, so like we done it with the previous one. Screen.copy, and we're going to have a while loop in here, so while true, and then we're gonna break out of this loop at some point basically. So while true, we need to create a surface, which is a pygame.surface, and we're going to take the tile.width plus 5 and the tile.height plus 5. Okay, this is just some numbers that I came up with as well by doing some tests. Then we're going to fill up this, so this is we're going to create this surface based on the tile width and height. So that surface is going to be only for that specific tile that we're flipping. Okay, so we're just going to fill this color only in that little tile in here. So because if we fill the whole thing, then we're going to have to draw the tiles again, and that's not fun. So we just want to get rid of the tile here, and then we're going to just print the tile on top of that surface again. Okay, so we fill that with the black background, with the background color, and then we take that screen copy and we blit this surface on top of it using the tile.x and tile.y coordinates. And then we will take the screen and we're going to blit this screen copy. Okay, so just into 0 and 0. Okay, now we have a condition in here. So for this condition to work, I'm gonna need to add another variable. So there's this variable up here in the new. So just after we create the tiles, we're going to create this variable called flip, which we're going to initialize that as true. So it's just to keep a track whether the tile is flipped or not. Okay, so we're just going to initialize that as true. And then we're going to come back in here to our review animation. And we need to check if self.flip. So if that is true, which it is right now as starting with, then we need to do tile.y plus equals 6, tile.height minus equals 12, tile.font y plus equals 4, and then tile.font height is equals to a max function between the tile.font height minus 8 and 0. Okay, so again, these are just numbers that I came up with by doing tests and seeing what works and what doesn't. And this max function, so what the max function do, it takes two arguments in here and it returns the max of those two, so the biggest of those two. Okay, so we don't want the font height to go lower than 0, because otherwise that is going to mess up the font and it's not going to work. So if the font's height goes in negative, it just doesn't work. Okay, so we want the maximum to be 0. So if this font height goes lower than 0, then it just returns 0 basically. Okay, so that is if the flip is true, and then else if the flip is false, we do tile.color equals to the color that we're passing in, tile.y minus equals 6, tile.height plus equals 12, tile.font y minus equals 4, and then tile.font height. In this case, we're going to take the minimum. So we have the maximum function, which takes the higher argument, and the minimum, which takes the minimal argument, between tile.font height, in this case plus 8, not plus equals, just plus 8, and tile.font size. Okay, so if the self.flip is true, that means we are reducing the size of the tile, and then if it's not, then we are increasing that height. So you see in here, we first, if it's true, it means it's flipping, let's say like that. So it's true that it's flipping, so it's decreasing the height of the tile. And then if it's not true, if it's not flip anymore, if it's not flipping anymore, that means it's already flipped, right? Then we need to increase the height of that tile. Okay, so I hope this is making sense, guys. And then we're going to have another condition here to check whether the tile font height is equals to 0. So that means it's right in the middle. So whenever it's decreasing the height of the tile, we do self dot flip equals false. Okay, so we decrease the height, and then whenever that is in the middle ground, then we just flip it. So we put false, and then we start to increase that height back up, and it gives that impression that is that's flipping the tile. And then we do tile dot draw. So we just draw that tile into the screen, and we do pygame dot display dot update. So we just update the screen, and we also need to adjust the clock tick to the FPS so it doesn't go too fast or too slow depending on your computer. And then the last condition in this function is if the tile dot font height is equals to the tile dot font size, then we set the flip back to true, and then we break out of this function. So whenever this condition is true, whenever the font height is equals to the font size, that means we shrinked it and we went back up. And then we just set this back to the default, which is true, and we break out of the loop so we don't do this again. Okay, so it's already flipped. Okay, that is everything for this review animation function. Let's actually call that down here in this check letters function. We're going to call that yeah, inside of this outer for loop, but outside of the inner for loop. Okay, so we do self dot review animation, and then we pass in the tile that we want to flip. So self dot tile, self dot current row, select the current row, and I for the index of the letter or the tile that we're flipping, and then the color. Okay, so this is going to do letter by letter. So it will come in here, it will check the letter, it will do all of this, and then we call this function, we review that letter, and then we go again for the next letter, and we do the same for the next letter, we review the color, and then we do again for the next letter, and so on. So let's just test this. If I run it, and then I input anything here, I press enter, there we go. We got the flipping animation. And as our words in here is, what did I pass in? I forgot. We pass in speed. So we do have an S and we do have a D. Okay? We don't have K, we don't have J, we don't have A in speed. Okay? Let's try something like spear, like I've done it before. Okay, press enter. Okay, so you see, it's green for S, it's green for P, and it's green for E. But we don't have A, we don't have R. Now let's type in speed. Do that. We got all green, and then we just resetted the game basically because we don't have the end screen yet to show all the text, so we just reset it automatically. Do you know what I'm gonna do? Is I just noticed that it's quite bright, this green, and I feel like I was using a different tone of green and yellow. Even the yellow, let's do like this just for testing. You see yellow, it's a bit hard to see actually the white on the yellow. We're going to quickly just go to our settings, and we're going to just change a little bit in here. So the green, instead of being 255, we're just going to decrease that to 200, so it's a little bit darker green. And then also the yellow, we're going to do 200 for reds and 200 for green. Okay, so it's just a bit of a darker yellow as well. And then the light gray, we can leave 100, 100, 100. Okay, so let's just try this one more time. I'm going to just input a spear in there. Okay, now is a lot better to see, right? And then if I do this, something like that, then we can have this darker yellow, so it's a lot better to see. Okay, and then the gray doesn't really matter, you can still see it. Alright, so the video is already quite long, this part, but I want to finish all the animations in this video, and then the next video, the part 4, it will be just to conclude and draw all the UI elements. Okay, so let's just power through the last animation that we need, which is the row shaking if you don't have enough letters on the words, okay, on the row basically. So this row animation is a little bit more complex, and I had to actually work quite a lot on that, on the numbers as well, because we have to shake it. It moves to the right and it moves to the left, and then it decreases that movement, so it shows like that shaking and then stopping animation. So we're going to go at the top here. After this draw function, we're going to define a new function here called row animation, and we don't need any parameters in there. And this is going to be the row shaking if not enough letters is inputted. Okay, so for that we're going to need to create a new variable in the new function here. We're just going to call it literally not enough letters. Okay, and we're going to just initialize that as false. And then in the row animation function, the first thing we're going to do in here is to set that variable, set that variable to true first. Also because we're going to be checking this variable in, I believe, in the draw function to show that the title at the top saying not enough letters. So that's why we changed that to true in here. So we're going to create a variable called start position, which is the self.tiles 0 0 dot x. So we're basically just taking the first tile on the left side and we're taking the x position of it. It doesn't matter which row we're using it because the x position is always the same for all the rows. So that's why I'm just hard coding the 0 and the 0 in there. And then we have a variable for amount to move, which is 4. Again, some of these numbers here, I just came up with it myself by testing and doing like tests and errors to see how much we should move. And then move equals 3. We have this variable move equals 3 in here. And we need to do a copy of the screen, self.screen.copy. And we need to fill that copy with the background color. And now we're going to start a for loop. What's missing here? Not blit, it's fill. There we go. And then we're going to start a for loop in here. So for row in self.tiles, and for the tile in that row, we do if the row is not equals to self.tiles self.current row. Okay, so if it's not the row that we're current selected, then we just draw those tiles into the screen, okay, into the copy. So basically we're making a copy of this screen and then we're filling the whole screen with the background color. Okay, so the whole screen is going to be filled with background color. We're not going to see any tiles anymore. And then we need to check if the row is not the current row. We need to draw all the other tiles around it and just keep clear the row that we're working on right now, so we can make that movement. Okay, so if we don't do this, then the animation is going to just override whatever we have on the screen and it's going to look a bit weird. It's not going to look good. Okay, so that's why we need to take and draw all the tiles around. And now we're going to make this while loop. So while true, then we're going to break out at some point. Inside of this while true, we're going to do while self.tiles self.current row and 0. So we're going to take the first tile on that current row dot x. So while that coordinates of that tile in the row x is less than the start position plus the amount to move. We're gonna do self.screen.blit. We'll blit that copy into 0, 0. And then we're gonna do a for loop. So for tile, for tile in self.tiles, self.current row. Okay, so we're taking that tile, that specific tile in the current row. We do tile.x plus equals move. Okay, so this is the amount that we can move, and this is the actual movement. So we're taking each tile in that current row that we're in, and we're adding the move to the x. So we're just basically gonna move the x position of the tiles, yeah. And then we do tile.draw. We draw that into the screen. And then we just, outside of this for loop, we can adjust the clock tick, the clock speed to the FPS. And then we just do the display flip. So this is the first while loop in here. We're moving that row to the right. So we're checking the x coordinate of the tile is less than that start position plus the amount to move. If it's less, then we're moving to the right. And then the second while loop in here, which is going to be very similar, is going to be to move to the left, so to move back. Okay, so self.tiles, self.current row 0.x plus start. So in this case, it's going to be greater than starts position minus the amount to move. Okay, so now the tile is greater than the position minus the amount to move. Then we need to move back to the left. So same thing, self.screen.blit. We blitz the copy at 0, 0. And then again, we do a for loop for tile in self.tiles. We take all the tiles in that current row. Same thing as we're doing here, okay? And we do tile.x. In this case, now it's minus equals to move. Okay, so if we add the move to the tile, we're moving to the right. If we decrease the move from the tile, we're moving to the left of the screen. And then we do tile.draw, same thing. We draw that in the self.screen. And then same thing, we just adjust the clock tick. And we do pygame.display.flip. So every time the tile is less than start position plus movement, we move the whole row to the right. So we keep moving until this condition is false. And then we go and we move them back to the left until this condition is false. And then outside of this for loop, we need to take the amount to move and we need to subtract 2 from it. So we move a big movement first, and then we decrease that. So the movement is going to be a bit less, and then we decrease again, the movement is going to be less. So it's always going to be less the movement. So it gives that shaking impression, okay? And then in here we need to break out of this main loop. So the condition is if the amount to move is less than 0. So if we want less than 0, then we want to just stop. We just break it. That's it for the row animation. I hope you guys understand, and you can always just rewatch my explanation and try to understand a bit better, try to understand what all of this is doing, okay? And now let's just test this then. That row animation function, we need to go all the way down to the events into here. So remember I put this comment in here, row animation not enough letters. We just remove the pass and we call the row animation in there. Okay, so if you press the return key and there's not enough letters, so it's not equals to 5, then we just go to this else and we do this row animation. Let's test this. There we go. So we type in a few letters. There's not 5 letters in there. You press enter. Do you see that the row, it shakes to the right and to the left quite a big amount, and then it is lower and it slows down to the end. Let me see if I can demonstrate this a bit easier. If we go to the settings and you reduce this FPS maybe to 10, and then run this again, and then we press enter. Okay, so you see it's a bit slower now. You see that it goes all the way to the right, all the way to the left, and then it goes to the right again, but less than the previous time, and to the left, and then to the right, but less, until he reaches the center again. Can you guys see that? It only happens one to the right, left, again, two. It only happens 3 times, I think. So 1, 2, 3, and that's it. I'm just gonna change this back to 60, and yeah. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this part. I really hope you guys understood my explanation. If you don't understand some of it, just leave me a comment down below. I'll be happy to try to explain a bit better for you. And yeah, stay safe, guys, and I'll see you guys on the next part. See you later.